All right, let's get right into it. A teacher is dead, shot by police in Cameroon as she walked home from work. This happened on Tuesday in Garoua, the stronghold of opposition candidate Issa Tchiroma Bakary, and it's just the latest escalation in what has become Cameroon's most dangerous political crisis in over 4 decades. The 92-year-old leader, Biya, has been declared the provisional winner of the presidential election. His opponent is also claiming victory, and Cameroon's youth are burning government offices. Protesters are being held before military tribunals, and an entire nation, 30 million people, just holding its breath, waiting to see if the next few days bring peace or bloodshed. Today, we have urgent coverage coming out of Cameroon because this situation is spiraling out of control fast. The headlines, they tell the story. Biya has been declared the provisional winner after more than 40 years in power. Police opened fire on crowds, killing a female teacher in the district of Garoua. At least 20 protesters arrested as tensions explode in the big cities. Security forces are out there dispersing election demonstrations with tear gas. Catholic bishops are calling for calm, just as the opposition declares its own victory. You have the governing party offices being touched. There are also reports of military officials congratulating the opposition candidate. And the Archbishop of Bamenda, he's out there pleading for patience while the whole nation just holds its breath. This is what's happening in Cameroon right now. And the only question anyone is asking is this: after more than 40 years, is Biya's grip finally slipping? Here's what we do know. October 12th, Cameroonians went to vote in a presidential election that was supposed to be straightforward. But 10 days later, the country is anything but calm. The government, they are saying 92-year-old Biya won, says he got 53%. But his challenger, Issa Tchiroma Bakary, he's 76, a former minister who was with Biya for decades before he broke away. He's saying that he won the election, that he got 60%. So Tchiroma is releasing his own result. He's claiming cabinet ministers, even military officials, are calling him up, congratulating him. And his supporters, they are hitting the streets. And the response from the government is been swift, it's been heavy, and now it has turned deadly. Police have arrested at least 20 people, and some of them, they are facing military courts. The charge, insurrection. You had protesters setting fire to the ruling party's headquarters in Douala, Yaoundé, Garoua. Security forces are right there confronting demonstrators who are just demanding transparency. The Catholic Church, they observed the election. They are saying it was marked by serious irregularities, and the Constitutional Council, they are the only ones who can legally declare a winner. They haven't said a word yet. Now, according to Cameroon's electoral code, they have got 15 days from election day to make the final call. That deadline is October 27th. That's just 4 days away. And Cameroon's Territorial Administration Minister, Paul Atanga Nji, he said Tuesday the government will not tolerate any attempt of insurrection or breach of public order. So what happens next? This is what's going to decide whether Cameroon, a country already fighting a brutal war in its English-speaking regions, already battling youth unemployment near 40%, whether it survives this moment intact or if it just descends into something much more worse. In today's episode, we are breaking down exactly how this crisis blew up, what the evidence is actually showing, and what comes next. Let's get into it. Alright, so think about this. October 20th, 2025, the government comes out and announces Biya has won Cameroon's presidential election, says he got 53%. Just one problem though. 6 days before that, his opponent already declared himself the winner. So who's telling the truth? What happens when an entire nation has no idea who their next president actually is? This right here is a fundamental crisis gripping Cameroon. You have two competing claims to the presidency. It's creating this constitutional deadlock and is pushing the whole country straight towards chaos. And the timeline, it just shows how fast this all escalated. October 12th, election day, Over 8 million registered voters, 13 candidates on the ballot. The world's oldest head of state, 92-year-old Biya, he's looking for his 8th term in office. He came to power back in 1982, and standing against him, Issa Tchiroma Bakary, 76. He's a former government minister, a long-time Biya ally, who just resigned back in June to join the opposition. Then on October 14, just 2 days after the polls closed, before any official count is even announced, Tchiroma gets on Facebook. He just declares himself the winner, says he got 60% of the votes. He calls on Biya to concede, to respect the will of the people. The government response, it was immediate, it was furious. The Deputy Secretary General, Gregory Onwana, he dismisses the claim entirely, says Tchiroma didn't win, says he didn't even have the polling results. The Minister of Territorial Administration, he went even further. He accused Tchiroma of plotting. He called it a diabolical plan to set Cameroon on fire. 6 days later, October 20th, the National Vote Counting Commission, they released their provisional results, and according to the government numbers, Biya is in the lead with 53%. Tchiroma is trailing at 35%. But Tchiroma, he doesn't accept these numbers, not at all. He starts publishing his own tallies on Facebook, releasing results from 18 of Cameroon's 58 administrative divisions. He's insisting that these divisions, they represent 80% of the electorate, and they confirm his 60% win. The government immediately pushes back on that calculation. They argue, no, 80% of the votes don't live in those 18 divisions. They are demanding Tchiroma release the data from all 58 divisions, including the diaspora votes. So here is the constitutional reality. Only the Constitutional Council can legally declare the final results. Under Cameroon's electoral code, the council has 15 days from election day to make its announcement. That means October 27th is the deadline. And until then, Cameroon is just stuck in the limbo. Two men claiming victory, two sets of numbers, no shared truth. And this isn't just political theater. This is a nation that is basically split between two competing realities. And when people can't even agree on the basic facts, that's when things get dangerous. Because what's happening on paper is one thing. What's happening on the streets of Cameroon cities, that's something else entirely. First, it started with protest. Then came the tear gas. Then the arrest. Then fire. And now, Tuesday, October 21st, police opened fire. A teacher is dead. And the Cameroonian government is charging its citizens with insurrection just for demanding to know who really won. This timeline of escalation, it moves fast. October 14th, Tchiroma declares himself the winner. His supporters, they immediately take to the streets. Some are celebrating, some are protesting, some are just demanding transparency. And the geographic spread here is significant. We are seeing protests erupt in at least 6 major cities. That's the political capital. Douala, the economic hub, the biggest city. In Douala, a few specific incidents really stand out. October 15th, protesters in that particular district, they start setting up road barricades, blocking traffic. They are chanting slogans accusing the Electoral Commission of fraud. Security forces moved in real quick with tear gas. There were brief clashes before the crowds finally dispersed. Over in Garoua, the situation got even more tense. Tchiroma's supporters set up an armed vigil right outside his house. They say they are protecting him from arrest, from harm. The message is crystal clear. Touch him and there will be consequences. And then the turning point, October 15th, the ruling party's office in Dechang, it catches fire. The whole building burns. Images, videos, they just spread like wildfire all over social media. You are seeing Instagram with flames consuming the building. TikTok videos capturing the smoke. On X, the platform we used to call Twitter, it just exploded with reactions. Some people are celebrating it, calling it righteous anger. Others are condemning it, saying it's a dangerous escalation. So the government security response is overwhelming. Tear gas deployed across multiple cities. Riot police mobilized. A heavy security presence on the streets. Checkpoints being set up. The message from the authorities is unmistakable. Order will be maintained by force if we have to. And then, On Tuesday, October 21st, in one of the districts in Garoua, protests demanding respect for what demonstrators say are the real ballot results. Police opened fire to disperse the crowds. A female teacher at the neighborhood's Arab primary school is shot and killed as she's returning from work. According to local sources, she was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Then comes the crackdown. The Minister of Territorial Administration, Paul Atanga Nji, he confirmed the numbers on October 21st. At least 20 people have been arrested, and the charges, they are severe. 20 people are facing a military tribunal for insurrection and incitement to rebellion. These are serious crimes under Cameroonian law. They could carry lengthy prison sentences. The government accusation against Tchiroma is stark. Minister Atanga claims he's plotting what officials are calling again a cleverly planned diabolical plan with networks both inside and outside Cameroon, all aimed at setting Cameroon ablaze. So the government is calling it insurrection. The opposition is calling it defending democracy. And caught right in the middle, ordinary Cameroonians like that teacher in Garoua who just wanted to get home from work. They just want to know one thing. Did my vote even count? Well, the Catholic Church, they think they have some answers. And what their observers found, it should worry everyone. So when you are trying to find the truth about what really happened in an African election, the government is not going to give it to you. The opposition is not going to give it to you either. The real answers, they come from the people who we are actually watching. In Cameroon, that's the Catholic Church. And their report, it reveals something pretty disturbing. First, let's just establish their credibility. The National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon, they deployed around 202 accredited observers to over 12,000 polling stations across the whole country. This is comprehensive coverage, all 10 regions. And their findings, they have a paradox in them. The voting itself, generally calm, orderly, no major violence at the polling stations, no armed groups messing with the process, no mass chaos. But then comes the critical observation from the bishop's statement. They found, and I quote, several irregularities that seriously hinder progress towards democracy. And the details here, they really matter. They are talking about polling stations being relocated without telling voters. People showing up to vote only to find their station was moved somewhere else. Voter lists that were incomplete. Some lists even had the names of dead people on them, which raises the question, who cast those votes that elected for Biya? They saw an unequal distribution of ballot papers between candidates. Some polling stations reportedly had way more papers for certain candidates than for others, and reports of ballot stuffing in some areas. It's not just them. A coalition of 8 civil society groups documented more concerns. Voter lists being displayed late, sometimes not until election day itself. This is a violation of Cameroonian law, which requires them to be published at least 4 days in advance. The late display makes it impossible for people to check if they are registered or to challenge any errors. There's one specific example, and it comes from investigations by the New York Times. Mayuka is a locality in the southwest region, an area heavily affected by the armed conflict. Official figures show over 11,000 out of 19,000 registered voters cast their ballots. That's a 60% turnout. Now, compare that to Biya, the regional capital. Only 5,000 out of 59,000 registered voters showed up. That's less than 10%. A rights group, Akon Felice Abo, explained the discrepancy to reporters. He said rural areas, they are just more susceptible to stuffing because the opposition doesn't have enough people out there to monitor the count. And you have got to connect this to the broader context. The Anglophone regions, the Northwest and Southwest, they have been torn apart by a 9-year armed conflict. Over 6,000 civilians have already been killed. Nearly 900,000 people displaced from their homes. And separatist groups, they called for boycotts. And yet, in conflict zones like Mayuka, the turnout was suspiciously high. So the church, they are facing a dilemma right here. They have to acknowledge all these serious problems, but at the same time, they are still calling for peaceful acceptance of whatever results the Constitutional Council announces. It's a very delicate balance between telling the truth and trying to keep the peace. So the evidence of irregularities, it is well documented. Multiple independent sources are confirming these problems. The question that is left is, do all these irregularities, do they add up to systematic planned election fraud, or are these just the kinds of problems you see in a lot of African elections? Well, the opposition, they have got a theory, and it involves secret phone calls from some very surprising people. Just imagine this: a government minister that just helped his president win re-election. Now imagine that same minister calling the opponent to congratulate him instead. Well, according to Issa Tchiroma, that is exactly what is happening. And if he's telling the truth, it means Biya's grip on power is even weaker than it looks. Tchiroma's claim, it's explosive. He says he is receiving congratulatory phone calls from cabinet ministers and military officials. We are talking about people inside Biya's own government, his own security apparatus, people who are acknowledging his victory in private while publicly they are supporting the official story. So what would this mean if it's true? Well, it's a pattern you see all the time when authoritarian regimes start to collapse, when insiders start making contact with the opposition just to protect themselves in case there's a transition, when people start hedging their bets, when loyalty stops being ideological and it just becomes transactional. Now, we have to address the credibility question. Tchiroma, he hasn't provided any recordings. He hasn't named any names. And frankly, that's understandable. Revealing their identities would put these people at enormous risk. In authoritarian systems, disloyalty, even just the perception of it, that can mean your career is over. You are arrested or worse. The government's position on this, complete denial. They are not acknowledging any internal defections. No response to these specific allegations. Just a blanket dismissal of the whole thing. But you have to consider the evidence that supports this possibility. Tchiroma himself, he's a former Biya minister who broke away after decades of service. Another candidate, Ballots Bakary, he also served in Biya's government for years, and he stayed there even while he was running against him. The pattern, it shows that long-time allies are distancing themselves. Some are doing it openly, maybe others are doing it quietly. Social media is providing more indicators. We are seeing reports on different social media platforms of government officials' family members expressing support for the opposition. Screenshots of private messages are getting passed around. Videos of people claiming to have inside knowledge. Now, whether any of this is accurate or if it is just rumor, these are narratives they spread. And why this matters, it becomes really clear when you look at how Biya's power actually works. It has always rested on two things: patronage networks and military loyalty. Control of the resources, control the appointment, control the security forces. That's the formula. If those foundations are starting to fracture, then no amount of official results can keep him in power long term. Now, the counterpoint, it deserves to be considered. This could also just be rumors. Rumors designed to create an impression of weakness. It's psychological warfare. Make it seem like the regime is crumbling to encourage actual defections. Perception becomes reality. We have to be honest about the uncertainty here. In systems like this, truth is always hard to verify. Information is a weapon. Everyone has an incentive to shape the narrative. Verification becomes almost impossible. So, whether these congratulatory calls actually happened, we may never know for sure. But the fact that the claim is plausible, that people believe it's possible, that it fits a pattern of elite defection we have seen in other countries, this is significant all by itself. So, secret phone calls, competing vote counts, burning buildings, a teacher shot dead, 20 people in military custody, and through all of this, one institution has been conspicuously silent: the Constitutional Council, the only group that can legally end this crisis. So where are they, and why haven't they said anything yet? Right now, there's a small group of judges, and they are holding Cameroon's fate in their hands. They are called the Constitutional Council, and within days, they have to answer the one question that could make or break this nation. Who won the election that held on October 12th? First, let's explain the institution. The Constitutional Council is Cameroon's highest court on election matters. Under the Electoral Code, it is the only body that is legally empowered to declare the final presidential election results. Not the Electoral Commission, not the government, not the candidates, only the council. And the legal framework here is specific. The council must announce its decision within 15 days from election day. Since the vote happened on October 12th, that means the deadline is October 27th. That's just 4 days away. And that deadline, it creates urgency. You think justice and accuracy should matter more than speed, but the law requires a decision. Some reports say they are expected to announce today, which is October 23rd. Either way, time is running out. What they are supposed to do is clear. They are supposed to review the provisional results from the National Vote Counting Commission. They are supposed to investigate the documented irregularities, validate or invalidate the results, and then make the final proclamation. But there is a credibility problem. We can't ignore it. The Constitutional Council historically has sided with the incumbent president. It is widely seen as lacking genuine independence. Critics argue it functions more like a rubber stamp for whoever is in power than as an impartial umpire. And the pattern from past elections proves these concerns has a basis. Because in 2018 election, it also had fraud allegations. The opposition candidate back then, Maurice Kamto, he claimed victory. Civil society documented irregularities. The council, they validated Biya's win despite all the protests. There was no serious investigation that led to any change results. The situation today, it just mirrors that pattern. The council has received the provisional results, the same provisional results that have already declared Biya the winner. The ones showing Biya at 53%, Tchiroma at 35%. It has almost certainly received the opposition complaint about all the irregularities. It has the Catholic Church's observations noting serious problems. Now, it has to decide. And what happens when they do announce? It creates a few possible scenarios. If they just confirm Biya's win as announced, massive protests are almost certain. The opposition will reject it as fraudulent, and the street demonstrations will likely get more intense. And the government crackdown will probably follow. We have already seen one death. If they order a recount or an investigation, that would be unprecedented. But it could ease tensions, at least for a little while. It would signal that the institutions still have some independence left inside them. If they somehow recognize the opposition's victory, that would just shock the nation, and it will likely trigger a whole different kind of upheaval. This time from the government loyalists. The political pressure they are facing, it's coming from all sides. The government expects validation. The opposition is demanding transparency. The Catholic Church is calling for results that genuinely reflect what the voters intended. And the international community, they are just watching, concerned about stability. The October 27 deadline is looming, whether Cameroon is ready for it or not. The council has to speak. The question is, will their words be believed? And does belief even matter anymore when both sides have already chosen their own truth? The deadline is coming, but there is one voice that has been conspicuously absent from this entire crisis. The man at the center of it all, Biya himself. He has barely said a word since the election. And that silence, well, that might be the most telling thing of all. He's the world's oldest head of state. He has ruled Cameroon since 1982. He just allegedly won an election by 18% points. So why has Biya been almost completely silent while his country is tearing itself apart? First, you have to understand the pattern. Biya is, well, he's known for long absence from Cameroon. He often spends months at a time at luxury hotels in Switzerland and other European countries. Geneva, that's his preferred destination for what officials just call private visits. And these trips, they fuel constant speculation about his health and about who is actually running the country back home. His public appearances during this crisis, They tell the story through his absence. October 12th, he voted. State TV showed him casting his ballot. The video footage confirmed, yes, he was physically present, he was mobile, and then he largely just disappeared from public view. No major speech to address the nation, no press conference to defend the results, no televised address calling for calm, no direct engagement at all with the crisis that is consuming his country. His ministers, they speak for him. His party representatives, they defend him. But Biya himself, he remains largely invisible. The health question, you just can't avoid it at age 92. There is a persistent speculation circulating about his physical condition, his cognitive condition. The government, they adamantly deny any problems. Back in 2024, when Biya was gone for over 6 weeks, authorities actually warned the media against even discussing the president's health, calling it a matter of national security. But that order, it has been widely ignored by Cameroonians who just keep questioning his capacity to govern. The historical context here really matters because Paul Biya has ruled since November 1982. That's over 42 years. He's the one who removed the presidential term limit back in 2008 through a constitutional amendment, allowing him to keep running indefinitely. He's now seeking an 7-year term. If he completes it, he will be 99 years old. Some even put him at more than 100 years by the time he is done with this election that he will soon be announced as the winner. And this, it creates a succession vacuum, a dangerous uncertainty. There is no clear successor named, no formal process. All the speculation centers on his son, Frank Biya, or the Secretary General, Ferdinand Ungo, as potential successors. But these are just rumors. They are not formal succession plans. And the contrast is stark. Why Biya stays largely invisible? Tchiroma is everywhere. He's giving speeches. He's releasing his vote counts. He's mobilizing supporters. He's using Facebook to talk directly to the people of Cameroon. The visual difference in leadership presence is striking. You compare him to other long-ruling African leaders. Uganda's Yoweri Museveni, he has ruled for 39 years, but he maintains a very visible public presence. Rwanda's Paul Kagame, 25 years in power, he projects active control through regular public appearances. Even leaders with authoritarian tendencies, they typically understand that you need to be seen to maintain authority. The fundamental question this silence raises, it goes deeper than just optics. Is Biya actually in control? Or is it just a figurehead while other people are pulling the strings? Is he making the decisions about how to respond to this protest, whether to negotiate, whether to use force, or are those choices being made by ministers, by security chiefs, by party officials without his direct involvement? What this means for the crisis, it becomes clear. If Paul Biya himself isn't engaged, if he's not actively managing this situation, then Cameroon doesn't just have an election crisis, it has a leadership crisis. You have got power without a visible power holder, authority without an authority figure, and that kind of vacuum just invites instability. So Cameroon isn't just facing contested election results, it's also facing the prospect of a 92-year-old president who may not be fully present to navigate the very storm his continued rule has created. And that brings us to the question that concerns everyone watching this unfold. After over 4 decades of Paul Biya, is his grip finally slipping? And if it is, what comes next? Every long-ruling leader eventually faces this question. Every authoritarian system eventually reaches this point. Every strong man eventually weakens. The only question is how the transition happens. Does it happen peacefully through democratic process, or does it happen violently in the street? That is what Cameroon is about to find out. Let's frame this historical moment properly. Paul Biya, he represents a particular generation of African leadership, the post-independence leaders, the ones who took power in the 1960s, in the 70s and in the 80s, and built these systems designed to keep them there indefinitely. leaders who rule through patronage networks, control of state resources, and the manipulation of democratic institutions. But the signs of strain, they are everywhere now. You have got former allies breaking away from the ruling coalition. Youth unemployment is at over 35%, creating a desperate generation with very limited economic prospects. A 9-year war in the Anglophone regions that have already killed over 6,000 civilians and displaced hundreds of thousands. You have got economic challenges despite all the natural resources, oil, cocoa, minerals. The generational divide, that tells perhaps the most important story here. Over 60% of Cameroon's 30 million people, they were born after Biya took power in 1982. They have never known any other leader. They have no memory of what came before. And increasingly, they are questioning why they should accept this reality as permanent. The regional context, it matters for understanding this moment because across Africa, young people are losing patience with leaders who just refuse to step down. Social media, it connects them to movements in other countries that are demanding change. They see what's possible elsewhere. Instability doesn't always lead somewhere better. The stakes, they go way beyond Cameroon's borders. It borders Nigeria, one of Africa's largest economy and most populous nation. It sits right at the crossroads of Central and West Africa. Major instability, refugee flows from a collapsed Cameroon that could affect all its neighbors. I'm talking about Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, Chad, the Central African Republic, and Nigeria. The economic implications, they matter regionally. Investor confidence is already declining. This political crisis will likely just accelerate those concerns about stability. Cameroon produces cocoa and oil for export. Any disruption, it threatens supply chains. Foreign investment, it could stall or just reverse. The scenarios for the coming days, they define the possible futures. First possibility, the Constitutional Council validates Biya's victory as announced. Protests, they likely intensify. The government may crack down even harder. More deaths like that teacher in Garoua. Arrests could multiply. The potential for violence, it just increases. Second possibility, the council orders an investigation or a recount. This, it buys time, but it doesn't resolve the fundamental questions of legitimacy. Both sides will just continue claiming victory. The uncertainty, it persists. Third possibility, the council recognizes the opposition victory. This will be unprecedented given the council's history. It will show the institutions can still function independently, but it might trigger resistance from government loyalists or military factions who are unwilling to accept that transition. The deeper truth here, it transcends which scenario unfolds. Regardless of what the Constitutional Council announces on October 27th or sooner, millions of Cameroonians, they probably won't believe it. That collapse of shared truth, that inability to agree on the basic facts about an election, that represents perhaps the most dangerous outcome of all. Societies can survive contested elections if their institutions have credibility. They struggle to survive when their citizens are occupying completely different realities with no common ground. And this connects to the broader question, the one that gives this meaning beyond just one country's crisis. Can African democracy survive when the institutions are controlled by the very people in power? What does genuine sovereignty look like when electoral processes face credible allegations of manipulation? How can citizens hold their leaders accountable when the courts, the electoral commissions, the security forces all appear to serve the regime rather than the constitution and the people? The ballots have been counted at least twice, depending on who you ask. The force used so far is been tear gas, arrest, and now live fire. A teacher is dead, but the deadline is approaching fast. And whatever the Constitutional Council announces, one thing appears certain. Cameroon has reached a turning point. The question that remains is whether the country emerges from this crisis with reformed institutions and renewed legitimacy, or whether over 4 decades of accumulated pressure and frustration finally breaks something that can't easily be repaired. Now, if you have watched to this point, thank you for watching. This is Frontline Africa, where we talk about geopolitics from Africa's own point of view, where we bring you the kind of stories with the kind of details mainstream media does everything to avoid. If you are in Cameroon or interested in everything that is happening in Cameroon, go to the comment section and drop your opinion. How do you think this plays out? At least in a few days' time, we will all find out. But we can only speculate. What do you think happens whichever way they announce the results? But at the end of the day, it is more likely that Biya will find a way to weather the storm and continue the plundering of Cameroon. If you want to see more content like this, maybe consider to subscribe and turn on those notifications so you don't miss a thing, anything that is happening in Africa. Because here, we talk about it. I am your host, Issa Tchiroma Bakary, and I will see you in the next one. It's a bye-bye for now.